Okay, the meeting is now being recorded.
Thank you, Sarah. This is the meeting of the Administrative Committee. We have present committee member Director Malik and myself, and we are waiting for Director Anderson to join us. We'll wait just a moment more to see if she can join us.
Sarah, Amy did join. She's as a attendee.
I'm working on it.
Oh, she is on as an attendee. Yeah, when we get a reminder that goes to all the people who want reminders, it's a reminder to join as an attendee. So I've made that mistake too.
Okay.
I believe Larry's also an attendee, possibly. He sees us, but he can't get in.
I'm not able to move anyone over.
Okay, I don't see Amy on as, yeah, I do see her on as an attendee. Okay, she's trying to join.
Yeah, I think Stephanie Locke has the same issue. She just texted me. Oh, there she is. Good.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Director Anderson, Stephanie. Okay, we can begin. Let's, all three committee members are present, so we don't need to take the roll. I think that's acceptable. So I call the meeting of the Administrative Committee to order. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are not.
Okay. So this is a time where members of the public can make can comment to the committee on any item within the district's jurisdiction for items that are not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment to the committee?
I see no raised hands.
Thank you. Then we will proceed to the action items.
Rash, you're muted.
I wasn't trying to say anything.
Okay, so we're.
I'm sorry. Who's it? What's that first name under staff contact? When we need a little.
Okay. All right.
Let's take a motion. And
yeah. So the first item is the adoption of the July 12, 21 committee meeting.
Right. So are there any corrections to the minutes of the July 12th committee meeting? I have none.
I have none. Safwat, if you don't have any, I'll move adoption of the minutes.
Yeah, I move to adopt the minutes of.
You mean you second? You second the motion, Director Anderson? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Do we need to take a roll? Do we need to take a roll a little off this afternoon? Do we need to take a roll call vote?
Suresh is saying yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Malik?
Yep.
Director Paul?
Yes.
Minutes are adopted 3-0.
Okay. Item 2 is expenditure of funds for consultant services for Sleepy Hollow.
Yes, this will be Larry Hampson taking the lead.
Good afternoon. So this is item 2, and this actually was on the July 12th meeting, but because the staff hadn't received proposals from the 2 consultants that were interested in proposing services, the item was pulled. So staff is proposing to retain a consultant to assist with design of rearing channel and quarantine tank upgrades at the Sleepy Hollow facility. So the rearing channel liner, which is made of Hypalon, has deteriorated. There are several places where it leaks. And because of some of the work that was done during the upgrade to remove rock and cobbles from the rearing channel pools, several of them have leaks that we're kind of concerned about. They could lead to piping of material from underneath the rearing channel and cause the liner to sag a bit. So staff is proposing to have a design to remove the Hypalon liner in 16 of the pools in the rearing channel and replace that with concrete and reattach a new liner, EPDM, a similar material to Hypalon. And this would stop the leaking and help preserve the liner as well. And to do that, we need some construction plans. These would be plans that are prepared to go out to a bid, public contract bid. And so that would be the first portion of the design work that would be completed. The second portion is to have a design to remove the existing quarantine tanks. There's 5 tanks at the site that are used on a daily basis when fish are brought in to quarantine them, make sure that they're disease-free. And those tanks are also older. Some of them are cracked. The bases have begun rotting. And in addition, there's a 6th tank that's used for salt treatment of the fish. The base on that is also deteriorating. Plus, refrigeration at the site is important to try to keep the water cool. There are small cool refrigerators. There are actually heat pumps for each of the quarantine tanks. Those are old. There are much more efficient refrigeration units out there these days. And staff would like to consider consolidating all of the refrigerator units into one in order to use the refrigerator unit both for cooling of the quarantine tank water and when the quarantine tanks are not being used to provide cool water to the rearing channel and create places of cool water refugia for the steelhead that are rearing in the rearing channel. So this would involve plans to demo the existing tanks, cut into the deck out at the rearing facility, cut all the plumbing and electrical lines that are currently servicing those tanks, and replace the tanks along with all of the plumbing, or reattach the plumbing and reattach the electrical and the drains and the air lines. We would need to do an analysis of how much power can be put out to those tanks for a refrigeration unit. We did get a power upgrade recently from 400 amp to 600 amp, but we don't want to blow through the power supply for the quarantine tanks. But we do want to maximize how much refrigeration can get to the tanks and get cool water going to the fish. So that's second part of the design would prepare us for another part of the bid, construction work. We haven't concluded if we should bid these as 2 separate projects, one for the rearing channel work and one for the quarantine tank work. It may make sense to do that because they're somewhat different contractor skills required. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it before we decide to go out to bid. So we did receive 2 proposals. I was hoping to receive some proposals from local engineers. It's always nice to be able to have somebody to turn to locally. We did get 1 proposal from Harrison Associates for this work. It was considerably higher than the proposal received from Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech was the firm that did all the design work for the recent upgrade and provided construction management services, meaning I was able to contact Tetra Tech during the construction process and get explanations for how things were designed. And when redesign needed to be done, Tetra Tech was on board to help with that. So the project manager for that upgrade would be the project manager for the proposed services here that is in front of you. And they came in considerably lower, I think just about $34,000 lower than the Harrison Associates proposal. I'm confident in their work. I think they could do a good job. They're familiar with the site. And both proposals were attached with this item, attachment 2A and 2B, and they both had a list of their services with the costs. You had to do a little adjustment to try to go apples to apples, and so that's why you see Tetra Tech at 61,000, and then once you take out some of the items that Harrison Associates proposed on that we probably won't need, then you come out with about I think it was it 34,000 or 31,000 down here. It was 34,000, right? So staff would propose to proceed with contract with Tetra Tech and for this work. So that's it in a nutshell. Be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, if I
Thank
could
you, Larry. And your
start
the
ahead
memo and
I was just going to say, if I could start ahead of the board, Director Malik raised a design and construction issue when this topic came up previously. Larry, did you address any of that in the way you formulated the RFP?
Oh, you mean as far as using like waterproof concrete? Was that the or what was the question previously?
Well, I don't know if Director Malik remembers, but it was, you know, why can't you just do either lined concrete or waterproof concrete? Obviously, you're talking about concrete bottoms, which will help with some of the, you know, uneven subsurface areas. But I just wanted to make sure that you know, it looks like we're locked into a type of construction that they'll be designing. Is there any room for difference or change or anything to, you know, adopt best practice?
Yeah, so there was one pool that was done previously, and I think the comment from Director Malik was why not use waterproof concrete, and so we did use waterproof concrete. But what we found is we do have problems with construction joints, leakage through the construction joints. They're what's called cold joints, and even with the waterproof concrete, we're not exactly sure we've been able to seal off between the existing concrete and the new concrete. So a liner, in addition to the waterproof concrete, is going to reduce the potential for seepage through these construction joints.
Great, thank you.
Question, please.
please go ahead.
You mentioned a figure of $34,000. Was that the saving between the two proposals?
Yes, the Harrison Associates proposal for about the same work was $34,000 higher than the Tetra Tech proposal.
So in page 18, what is that $97,972?
Page 18 of the exhibit?
Of the exhibit, oh no, page 18, no, pardon me, it is page 8 of exhibit 2A.
Page 8 of exhibit 2A, let me pull that up. Oh, the final page of the exhibit?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the basic tasks is what we're proposing to go with. I had asked the the consultants, well, you know, what about doing some of these other optional items? And so we don't have to have that done. The optional item there in the column, the biological review, we had thought it might be good to take a look at, well, can we optimize the operations of the facility, both for usage and for rearing fish. And so that was going to be an optional task to have a biologist, like an outside biologist, come into the facility and go, well, you know, you could try these different things in rearing your fish. We don't have to do that at this point. I asked them about permitting support. I think the only permit that is going to be required is an electrical permit from the county. It's like an over-the-counter permit. So I don't think we need support on that. It's possible we could get to the county and get in over our head, but the district's staff has obtained permits for a number of years. You know, bidding support, I guess, would be nice if there's a question about something that the consultant has done, but there's going to be 2 reviews of the consultant work, and so we should be able to catch any questions regarding the plans or specifications during those reviews. So I don't see that we really need bidding support. Construction phase support, if that is something that we need, that would come at a later board meeting. So that would come before the board for consideration with the actual construction work. So if the district needs a construction manager out there on site, that would come before the board at the time that staff proposes to go to construction.
Thank you.
Yes.
So just to be clear, those optional tasks are not included in what you're seeking board approval for now, is that right?
Correct. We're just seeking board approval for the basic tasks in the first column, the ones that total up 61,338. And I have requested, I think it's a 10% contingency, just in case we come across something during our design phase that, you know, we go, oh, well, that we need to do that, and it wasn't considered in the proposal.
Understood. Thank you. Director Anderson, do you have questions? Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, I do. I have concerns about this plan to have just one cooler. Having been involved in a lot of actually acclimation type work, flow through work with marine animals, if you have your whole population dependent upon one chiller, and that chiller goes out, that's, you know, that's life or death for those fish, because it's hard to get a replacement cooler, kind of refrigerator unit. And I would really recommend some kind of backup capacity, because this is a lot. I mean, you're really updating the facility, and that to me is a real gamble with this plan.
I should elaborate, I guess, on the current facilities out there. There is a large cooling tower, and that was recently upgraded. It's an evaporative type cooling tower. And so what happens with that is it cools water basically at night when temperatures are warm outside. It will cool water at night, like from about 6 o'clock in the evening till, you know, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning. But when temperatures are warm, then running water through that big cooler, that's the cooler that actually handles up to about 900 gallons a minute and provides water to the rearing channel. And currently the water also is cooled that is going to the quarantine tanks. However, what happens is when the temperatures are really warm, it actually warms the incoming water. So the cooling tower has to be shut off in the warm afternoons. And at that time, it's when these rearing tanks can then start to get warmer water. And so what we're trying to do is maintain as optimum conditions for these fish that have just been brought out of the river, because they're brought out of pretty harsh conditions. So we're trying to maintain as optimum habitat during the quarantine period. You're right, if we depend on one cooler, that cooler could go down, and so then we end up with warmer temperatures than we want in the afternoons. But what we wanted to consider was, well, can we get a cooler that actually you would have to have 5 different inflows and outflows, one for each tank, because you can't mix the water between tanks. You're trying to quarantine the fish, you're trying to stop disease from spreading, so you can't intermingle the water. So it would be kind of a sophisticated unit, but you know, you're right. Maybe we should consider, you know, can we get like a unit that splits flow into 2, basically does 2 or 3 tanks on one side, 2 or 3 tanks on the other. We're just looking for some savings in costs and some more effective refrigeration units that could be used for the rearing channel as well. So you're right. There's some positives and negatives about having just one unit, and we'll weigh those up and try to figure out what's really the best way to go here.
Aren't you also, you're planning to use UV to clean the water to keep disease down, UV treatment. And that's a very, very effective treatment for pathogens in seawater. What would the risk be at mixing the water from the different isolation tanks if it is all being treated with UV? Is there another?
So all the water, currently all the water that's being used at the facility goes through the UV treatment system. And so what happens is the flow is then split between the quarantine tanks and the rearing channel. And then it does all come back together eventually in the outflow from the rearing channel. So what we're doing is we're providing water to both those habitats from the same UV unit. I mean, all that water passes through one UV unit. And yeah, it should be effective at reducing the disease. However, the warm water is what can cause stress to the fish. And so we're dealing with both warm water conditions and disease in the water. And so we're addressing the disease in the water, hopefully with the UV. But also the fish, if they're too warm, they get stressed. Whether there's disease in the channel or not, they get stressed with the warm water.
So you're using a mix of cooling tower water, chiller water, and river water to get the temperature you want? Are you mixing all 3 of those sources?
Well, it's the same source, but they're going through different. They're going through different parts of the facility. So
they're different temperatures.
Right. Well, currently all water goes through the UV unit, and then all water goes through the cooling tower unit.
Okay.
And from the cooling tower unit, the water's then split, and some of the water goes to the auxiliary tanks on the site, and the rest of the water goes into the rearing channel. So all the tanks and the rearing channel are using the same water currently.
Yeah, I was thinking of what if you had a lot of different temperatures that you are trying to mix to get your optimum temperature into the tanks. Because I mean, the nights here can be extremely hot when, you know, you wouldn't know it this summer so much because global warming isn't, you know, it's affecting Fresno and the Central Valley. So it's sucking all the fog in here, and it's pretty cool. But when it's not, those night temperatures don't necessarily fall all that far, and your cooling tower could be pretty warmed up, I would think, the water.
Right. So all the facilities on site start with the same temperature water. So the rearing channel, there's no more cooling available. Once the cooling tower cools the water down, that's the water that goes to the rearing channel. The quarantine tanks currently have the capability of refrigerating a portion of that water. They have small refrigeration units on each tank. And so those refrigeration, well, we're going to consider whether just to replace each one individually with, you know, the latest type of unit, or combining all of that refrigeration into a single unit with 5 inputs and outputs, 1 for each quarantine tank. So if we start with water that's warmer than we want, say it's 70 degrees and we want to cool it down to 62, then we want to have that capability to do that individually for each tank.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Right. And then so what happens is, after a while, the fish ring or the fish rescue crews don't need to go into the river. They finish their rescue operations, but the rearing facility is still in operation.
Sure.
And at that time, if we had a refrigeration unit that was a single unit, we could turn to using that unit for cooling a portion of the rearing channel, cooling the flow that's in the rearing channels. So that's something we want to consider as part of this upgrade, is could we do that and be able to provide at least a portion of the rearing channel with cooler water?
Well, if you don't do it, isn't there a danger to the rearing channel?
There is, but there's the amount of refrigeration necessary to cool all of the flow for the rearing channel is enormous.
Yeah.
I don't think we even have the power to do that. And the cost is enormous to cool that. And so, I mean, if somebody directs that, you know, the water cannot exceed a certain temperature threshold, then that might be something that the district would have to look at. But we're trying to deal with a temporary situation during most of the year where the water heats up for a period of time during the day. Of course, warmer temperatures, yes, you're right. There can be some really warm nights where you have water temperatures that are well in excess of what the biologists would like to see. I think we've seen as high as like 75 degrees, which is pretty close to the threshold for mortality. So, you know, if those situations start to occur more frequently, then yes, the district would probably have to consider more refrigeration at the site.
I also noticed in one place, I think it was in the Harris and Associates, it was under the what you're not going to do. I think your the biological assessment with potentially some acclimation to higher temperatures, and that can be, you know, really successful. The Canadians have done a whole lot of that for this genus, and you could bring them up slowly to a warmer temperature and they'll be fine.
Well, I think the biologists would have to answer on that one, but I do know that during the Carmel fire last year, most of the fish in San Clemente Creek died during the fire because the temperatures were too hot.
Yeah,
and the fish in the rearing facility didn't.
That's an abrupt change rather than a ramped up change, which makes all the difference in the world for temperature changes. Okay, well, thank you for talking me through that. I was concerned about what you were having to seem like a risk to me.
Water temperature is one of the biggest problems that biologists face at the facility.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you.
So for the time being, am I hearing that there's reason to consider a wider range of alternatives and figure out the cost of those alternatives so we have more redundancy with the cooling towers, or shall we proceed with the information we have now?
Well, Larry was talking about possibly having the ability to split some of that cold water if it needed to be, to consider that in the design. So if that's, you know, a possibility, if it had to happen, then that sounds like it would be an immediate
help.
yeah, with that situation. Right, Larry? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at this as an opportunity to take a step towards more flexibility in delivering cool water.
Yeah.
But perhaps what, you know, the thing to do here is to get that installed and to see how effective it is. And if it's effective and you want to take another step, that can still be done. It's not like adding more refrigeration. I mean, that's an incremental kind of thing. You can add it later if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we have to have a big refrigeration unit that handles everything or nothing. So this is sort of a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's just that only having one thing that refrigeration units tend to do what hot water heaters do. They just poop out. They can. Thank you.
I have a question about the toxic stuff in the Hypalon and the disposal. When I read about that material that is in the liner that has been removed and that we'll have to remove more of it and dispose of it, I felt a little concerned. Do we have a way of making sure that the disposal plan is adequate?
Yeah, you had commented at the last meeting that you had some concerns about Hypalon, and I've done quite a bit of research. So Hypalon has carbon tetrachloride in it, but at less than 0.2%. And that's the substance that is EPA listed. However, I can find no recommendations on, well, you know, how do you recycle this stuff or how do you dispose of it? I talked with the contractor who previously took the material out, and he said he took it right to the marina landfill. He didn't have a problem with disposal. I've tried to contact the landfill a couple times. They haven't returned a call, and just want to ask them, you know, is there any problem with disposal of Hypalon? I mean, Hypalon's actually used for liners for landfills. And the reason it's rated toxic is if you ingest or inhale carbon tetrachloride, that's a problem. But I mean, the carbon tetrachloride is bound up in the Hypalon at this point, and it's pretty highly resistive to, like, it's not water soluble. That's why they use it for a liner in landfills. So what I have done also is there's a rubber recycling plant in North Carolina, and I've reached out to them a couple of times to try to see, well, could you take this and recycle it? And I haven't got confirmation on that yet. But what we'll do as we move further forward on this is we'll find a way to either, you know, get confirmation that it can be recycled at, or I mean, disposed at the landfill, or find out if we can get it shipped off and recycled. I mean, it would be like shipping 16 large tarps, you know, for recycling. So it's not like it's a really big shipment or anything. It's just a question of, well, what's the proper way to dispose of it? And I'm not 100% there yet, but before we go out to bid for this, we will be.
Well, I really appreciate your doing all this research and checking, and feel like it's important that we be confident that our plan is safe for the and sort of same question related to the material that will be buried, that will remain on site after the replacement of the liners. Do we have any concerns about that? Will that contain some of this stuff? But you said it's not water soluble, so maybe it's not a concern, even if there are small amounts of it in the landfill that's left.
You know, the material that's under the liner now is native material. we're proposing just to remove that and then probably put it right next to the rearing channel. I didn't see anything in my research that would indicate that the chemicals would leach out that are in the Hypalon into the soil. We could have the soil tested to see if it has anything leached out. I mean, perhaps that's a good suggestion to do that, just to be sure that we're not just leaving toxic material on site.
Well, I guess if you think there's any possibility of that, maybe we should consider that. If you think it's really far-fetched and so unlikely that it's, you know, I'm going to defer to you because you know so much more about this. But
I think we could take a soil sample to Monterey Bay Analytics and say, please test for carbon tetrachloride. It would be a pretty straightforward test. It wouldn't be very expensive to do that.
It would not be?
No.
No, okay. Okay. So maybe that we should consider that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Are there other questions or any additional information that staff wants to? I want to say I really appreciate all the research you've done on all of this. Any discussion, further discussion, or would you like to make a motion? Yes, Amy.
Just a quick comment. This is silly, I guess. On page 15, it's like the 5th line up above task 5, and it says final cost estimates will be an onion of probably construction cost. Oh, so what's that? I don't know what it was supposed to be. So if I could figure it out, I wouldn't have asked.
You know, I did comment to the consultant that, you know, I hadn't heard that cost estimates are onions, but, you know, it was pretty appropriate. I think it was supposed to read probable opinion of construction costs.
Okay.
Not probable onion.
Thank you. A little light reading in the middle of this.
Yeah, no kidding. So do we want to make does one of you want to make a motion to recommend approval of staff's recommendation?
I make that motion.
Okay, I second it. Can we call the roll, please, Sarah?
Directors, you want to give public opportunity first?
Oh, thank you, Suresh. You're right. So thank you for the reminder. Is there a member of the public that would like to comment on this item now?
I see no raised hands.
Yeah, the only member of the public currently is Chair Edwards.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good to know. I think we can go ahead and vote then.
Director Malik?
You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Paul?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Okay, item 3. It's yours, Suresh?
Yeah, directors, this item is going to be, again, I think Larry and Thomas.
Sure, I can present on this item. So, as you know, or I think you know that the UV unit at the site was recently replaced with a larger unit capable of a higher dosage of UV rays to cut down on disease at the facility. That unit, the previous unit, did have a replacement set of UV bulbs. Probably those bulbs will need replacement every about 2 to 3 years, and it really depends on how long the facility is operated each year. Each bulb has a 16,000 hour life, and that life is reported by the unit. So you can actually go into the unit display and it'll tell you how many hours are left on bulbs. However, what we did find, it was kind of interesting when we got the unit shipped, we were asked, did we want to have it shipped by sea or did we want to have it air shipped? And air shipping was more expensive. But it turns out, with the backlog around the world, if we hadn't had it air shipped, we probably wouldn't even have the unit yet. So having an extra set of bulbs on hand, along with some other replacement parts that are recommended to be replaced once a year, we feel that that's a good, that should be a standard kind of protocol for this unit, is to have an extra set of bulbs on hand. We don't know how long it might take if we had to order them right now. And as a matter of fact, the last time I talked to the representative, he said that those bulbs that we're considering purchasing were still sitting in Long Beach on a boat. And that was about 2 weeks ago. So I would recommend that the board approve the purchase of a replacement set of bulbs and O-rings. And it's just under $9,000. I'm not sure if, I think each of you probably got a packet. And so you did have the quote. I know I went on the internet and I guess the link was broken to that quote, but it's just under $9,000. It's actually $8,979.44. I don't think that'll change. I hope it won't. So I recommend getting an extra replacement set there for just under $9,000.
Thank you. Questions from directors? Well, it sounds like a good idea to me. Can we see if there are any, we have no members of the public other than Chair Edwards still. Okay, so I move that we approve the recommendation, staff's recommendation on the replacement bulb. Sounds like a good idea to have them on hand. Is there a second?
Directors, we need to add $900 to the cost. I see that the quotation doesn't include the sales tax, and so this item will be subject to sales tax. So the authorization should be for a cost not to exceed $10,000.
On the quote, the sales tax is estimated at $645.86.
Oh, I do. Okay. I was looking at the bottom part. Okay. So yeah. I take my comments back.
Okay. All right. Thanks for checking though.
Madam Chair, could we clarify, is the shipping that's listed on the estimate, is that air freight or freighter? The $650?
I don't know how they expect to ship. I mean, they're on a boat in Long Beach, and I would guess they're going to put them on a truck to get them up to the district, and we'll take them from the district office in Ryan Ranch to the site.
It says the carrier is FedEx.
Oh, great. Oh, yes. Now I see. Right.
Probably truck. Other questions? Okay, then. Well, I move we recommend approving this request to the board.
And I already second.
No, he did.
Oh, did we already do this? No, we didn't. You seconded. Okay. So have we voted?
No.
No.
Okay.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Malik?
Yeah.
Director Paul?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. And now we are on item 4, amending fees and charges.
This is Stephanie Locke.
Thank you, Suresh. So this item actually is going to be expanded slightly today, but I'm going to start just by giving you a quick summary of what the resolution does. We have a fees and charges table in Rule 60 that can be amended by resolution of the board, so it doesn't have to be amended by district ordinance. And from time to time, we amend that table to reflect a positive correlation to the time, effort, and cost of providing certain services and actions that are in that table. So the staff report went out with the addition of a new line 37, which would provide costs for digitizing plans for water permits. And in that situation, an applicant is normally asked to provide us with plans and their applications electronically. But now that the office is open, there may be times when staff needs to do the scanning because it wasn't done prior to the applicant coming into the office. So we've determined that it takes about 30 minutes to scan, upload, and file a set of construction plans, and that's just a normal size set of construction plans. And so we would be charging $45, which is half an hour of our time to do that scanning and filing. There will be a slight change in the final staff report, assuming that you approve these two amendments today. And that will include that any additional time over 30 minutes would be charged at a rate of $90 per hour, which is our current rate. But I don't see many of those plans ever exceeding the $45 that's proposed in the table. But if we didn't put that in there, I could see somebody coming in with a massive set of plans and asking us to scan it because it would be cheaper than they're scanning it somewhere else. So that is one of the proposed amendments. It would add a new 39, and then the other clarification is the remainder of the table gets renumbered because we've added one additional line to the table. Then earlier today, John Lear had been talking to Gabby in my office about amending line 7, which is the fees charged for a confirmation of exemption. So when we're permitting a well that is non-alluvial or not in the resource system, if it's within 1,000 feet, there's sometimes a question about whether or not it is in the alluvium. And so at that point, we would potentially be taking a water quality sample, sending it to a lab, and paying the actual direct costs from the lab. So we would like to add an amendment to line 7 that would allow us to charge for the lab costs or direct costs that are related to the water quality sampling. So that's what I said. You're going to see a slightly different staff report in the board packet, but there would be those two changes. And anyway, I guess that really concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, Don and I can answer those.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions from directors?
I have no questions.
No.
And nor do I. And do we still have no members of the public? Right. Okay. So then I move to approve this recommendation.
As amended.
We have a second.
As amended.
Well, the recommendation to adopt the resolution that would amend the fees and charges, right?
Or to, as amended, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
As amended.
As amended.
Okay. Okay. As amended. Do I have a second?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Roll call vote, please.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Director Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. And now we're on item 5, the water master agreement.
And this next item is covered by John Lear.
Thanks, Suresh. Yeah, this is the item. There was a question in the budget about the contract with the water master, if we would be entering into another water master contract. and the issue that arises because the water master's financial year runs with a calendar year, and our financial year runs obviously half the calendar year and into the next calendar year. Typically, we sign a contract with the water master at the beginning of their financial year. They had indicated that they would like to use our services again for their next financial year. So that would span the end of this financial year and the next half of the next financial year. And in looking at the agreement that was about 12 years old that we had been using, there were some cost recovery mechanisms that were lump sum cost recovery mechanisms that had a lot of things built into them, with like half an hour drive time to certain sites, or different prices of gasoline that had not been updated in many years. And we were in the process of making an effort to move all of our contracts to time and expense to be the most transparent we can, and actually show the costs we incur to do the work. So we have drafted, with the help of the administrative division and David Laredo's office, we drafted this agreement and presented it to Watermaster and their staff. And in communications with them, we've come to this version of this agreement that both Watermaster staff and district staff agree upon. And we are now in the process of bringing it to the Water Management Board, and the Watermaster will be bringing this through their board in the timing of the event, so that we can enter into a contract to provide them services come January. So that's pretty much where this item stands, and I can take questions if there are any.
Thank you. I have one, but first let's see if other directors have any questions. Director Anderson, yes?
Yes, I have one question. It's probably easily answered, but on page 2, it says that the district shall perform the services as an independent contractor. And I know that independent contractor laws in California are quite strict, quite difficult for some. I've had it in the arts. So that's that just surprised me to see that. I guess maybe is that the only way to do it? Because you're already paying, as the district, you're already paying salaries with deductions, et cetera. Is that the point of doing it as an independent contractor from the water master?
Suresh, do you know the legal reason that we were advised to do that? I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, it's just that we are performing the services to the water master. So in no event, water master will treat us, the district or district's employees, as their employee. They are basically purely a contractual obligation between us and water master.
Thanks.
Director Malik, you have any questions? No, okay. I have a question on page 1 of the agreement, draft agreement. Towards the bottom of the page, there's just one thing that's not entirely clear to me, and I want to see if it's clear to the rest of you. Where it says towards the bottom, water master shall provide to district materials, etc. And it's the phrase, and necessary to the progress of the work. I'm on the second line of that paragraph, which are basically the prerogative of water master, etc. And I just, what does that mean? Basically, the prerogative of the water master. What is meant by that?
I think that was set up to, if we were to say tabularize a report for them, or summarize data sets for them, if the district does not have the data that we are being asked to perform perform actions on, the water master would need to provide those data to us so we can complete the task we're asked to complete. If they don't or don't want to, then we cannot complete that task. And so it's more access to their plan sets or anything that they have that the district doesn't own, and the district does not own any of that. And the water master owns the database that we maintain for them. So they own their data sets, even though they're public record.
All right, thank you, John. It's just the wording that confused me. I thought that must be what was intended, basically the information in the possession of the water master that we don't have access to otherwise.
Correct.
Okay, okay. Is it, Fran, do you think that's clear enough the way it is, or should
I assume both parties understand the meaning of it since they've already discussed it. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, and this language was actually taken directly from the old agreement. Mostly what was changed in between the old and the new agreement was about 4 different cost recovery mechanisms were removed, and it became just a time and expense type contract.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying for me. And the time and expense transition sounds like a good idea. And do we still have no members of the public attending? Is that still the case, Sarah?
Yes, that's the correct.
Okay. Hey, Director Anderson.
I have one more question on page 4. It's in the limit of liability. It alludes to a section that was highlighted in yellow and one in green. I don't have any yellow or green, so is that something that we need to pay attention to?
Yes, that language should be deleted from the contract itself. Basically, it referred to a previous paragraph that has been cleaned up. It doesn't exist in this contract anymore, so we just left that part of the language. It will be removed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I figured that. Okay, if there are no more questions, I move to recommend approval to the board per the staff recommendation. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Director Malik. Can we call for a roll call vote, please?
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Malik?
Yes.
Director Paul?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
I have one comment, is that I don't see this on the board agenda for August 16th, this item. Is it not going to the board?
It is going to the board, so I believe it's probably missing from the agenda. It should be in the agenda.
I can't find it on the agenda.
It will be added.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for catching that.
And there's more, which we'll talk about under the next.
What a surprise.
Okay, so are we ready to move on to the preliminary agenda for the board meeting? Okay.
This is all the gentlemen.
Let's do that.
Okay, so we had the joy of contemplating canceling the August board meeting because last time we met as chair, vice chair, we said, well, there's really nothing. There might be a couple of consent items, but we could maybe defer those. Well, obviously now we have a fairly full consent calendar. We believe that tomorrow we hope to see language on the water purchase agreement for pure water expansion, which will lead to an action item. We received a proposal for update of the GM's performance appraisal form and the performance appraisal activities that the board requested, but it came too late for the administrative committee, so that will be an action item. And there's one additional one. So just want to draw your attention to, there will be a meeting, and it's always good to meet. We only meet once a month, so it's important that we at least have our presence in case there's some public comment, what have you, but we do have a reason to meet. The closed session is scheduled for 5 o'clock. It's to address any progress and some thoughts about remedies on the complaint that we filed with the Public Utilities Commission. I don't foresee that lasting the full hour, but we will start at 5 and then take a break if we're done in 20 to 30 minutes. Then turning our attention to the regular session, the consent calendar will expand just as we talked about. And then I want to draw your attention to items 7 and 8, and then talk about a potential new 9. 7 is approving and authorizing a water purchase agreement for Pure Water Monterey expansion. We've kind of been leapfrogging each other with Monterey One Water as to who would be having its next board meeting when and if we get to language that we think fits the 4 corners of the direction we've been provided. Pretty hopeful that we see that tomorrow or Wednesday so we can get it into the packet and approve it. If we don't, then we'll pull this off of our agenda. But if it does get generally approved by staff and council by the end of the week, then it will probably go on Monterey One Water's board meeting ahead of us, and we'll pick it up in September. Item 8, this is the Dr. Richard Garcia, the follow-up on the last year's performance appraisal process. There were 4 directions from the board at that time towards the end of last year and into the beginning of this calendar year. That was to develop a new form to improve upon the form that the board subcommittee came up with for last year, to tie the evaluation to the strategic plan objectives, to shift it to a calendar year so the then sitting chair and vice chair will have continuity, and to continue with a third party facilitation of the review rather than a member or subcommittee of the board itself. So that proposal will be in there as an action item. And then an additional action item, Suresh, I went through the user fee report. I think we're ready to get authorization. Do you believe we are too for prepayment of the Mechanics Bank loan?
We definitely can if you don't want to if you want to bypass the administrative committee.
Yeah, so we'll make it an action item. And just for your background, in October, the board actually on a second motion, a slight change in motion, elected a strategy that said if the user fee receipts exceed the budgeted user fee amount of expectation in the budget itself, then it would be used first to prepay the Mechanics Bank loan, second to repay reserves of the districts used for water supply projects, and then third to build an offset or sunset of the water supply charge. So last year in the initial budget, we budgeted $4.25 million for receipts on the user fee. That was subsequently changed at mid-year to $5 million. And the actual receipts through the end of the fiscal year was $5,777,000 and change. So we have available $777,000. Suresh and the board approved in this current year budget, let me back up, in the mid-year budget last year, a reserve for prepayment of $500,000. And so we carried that amount into the current fiscal year budget. And so what we would do is take that 777, allocate 500,000 to prepayment and 277,000 to general district reserves to offset prior expenditures where we basically interfund borrowed for the shortfalls that our water supply charge had against water supply projects. So I think it's time. It'll send a great message to the public that we are taking action. It'll send a great message to the Ordinance 152 committee that while we don't have any excess money to set aside or sunset the water supply charge, we are taking action on one of their priorities, which is prepayment of the Mechanics Bank loan. So I think we'll develop a staff note and add that as an action item here. And those will be the changes. Joelle, I know you're listening. We may not have everything in hand tomorrow, but hopefully by Wednesday we will. So we put the packet together. And that's it.
Thank you. That's very good news. Do we have an approximate idea how much interfund repayment?
Yeah. So
the total to reimburse for water supply projects.
Yeah, it was well for water supply projects. Shoot, I just closed that folder.
If you don't have it at
but the Rabobank loan was about 2.8 million, 2.9 million. So over 3 years, we would have needed about 900,000 each year. We felt that 500,000 was reasonable. So we're going to hit that point of prepayment or the balloon payment, likely with not having it fully prepaid down. So we'll have our regular annual payment, and then we'll probably have a shortfall of a few $100,000 that we're going to have to likely finance internally. But you know, we'll address that in 2 years when we have to put together the budget for it. On the subsidy to the water supply project line, I don't recall, but it can be found in in the first Ordinance 152 committee packet for this year back in March. But I can find that for you. I'll send it off. But
okay, I just wanted to have an approximate idea. I mean, just a rough. But I can go to those minutes. The 152 committee.
Yeah, I think it was close to it was a little over $10 million, Dave. If I recall, it was like 29, $30 million plus. We've only collected like 18 or $19 million in water supply charge.
That's correct. And now that we've
a rough delta,
we've done the classic of talking while looking, I can tell you exactly. Okay, so we prepared a letter, and see the way it works is the folks on the Ordinance 152 committee have a singular kind of desire, and that's that, hey, you've got this other charge, you should now get rid of this charge. And what they forget is that this other charge was paying for the mitigation on the river and the conservation budget, which we no longer collect a separate surcharge for. So all the receipts of the user fee since it got reinstated really haven't created much of a surplus. It's created a little bit of a surplus, but not enough to fund all the excess needed for the water supply projects. And so we've been interfund transferring from reserves in order to do so. And so as of January 31st of this year, the net subsidy to the water supply fund was, just as Suresh said, it's $10.6 million. And so what we want to do is repay ourselves $10.6 million that came from non-water supply charge revenues. You know, we've spent, again, this is only through January, and keep in mind, we're still expending money on deep injection well number 4. We'll begin to spend money on pure water expansion, so numbers will go back up. And we do have to pay down the Mechanics Bank loan. So we spent 55 million, 54.8 on water supply projects, and we had only collected 29 million of the water supply charge. So the net undercollect was 25 million. So luckily through reimbursements and grants, we had a little over 15 million of that, so that our internal subsidy was only about 10.6 million. But again, you know, the proper financial behavior would be to repay ourselves, you know, pay off the loan, repay ourselves, and then look at starting to sunset. But bear in mind, there's other potential expenditures from the user fee on our pension liability, our post-employment obligation liability, other things that may come along, some Measure J, you know, that'll be a subject of dispute with some of the Ordinance 152 representatives. And there may be some additional capital projects. We do also have a pretty significant hit coming with the expansion. We have to expand the operating reserve. So that's an asset of the districts that we buy the water from Pure Water Monterey, but we don't turn around and sell it to Cal-Am. So it's our expenditure, and then we just sit on that. And it's it's one of those assets that is there for an emergency that you hope you never have. So it's just money in the ground, so to speak. But that's going to be a significant expenditure of funds as we finish off loading up the current operating reserve and then adding to it with the expansion operating reserve. So we have a lot of, expenditures coming that prevent us from just walking in and reducing the water supply charge.
Agreed, and I'm glad you're keeping track of all of them and looking into the future.
But we know we have to pay off or refinance the Mechanics Bank loan. So to the extent we can make a dent in it without making our reserves too thin, that's a good idea. So trying to satisfy a lot of different interest groups, but we can't satisfy just one of them at the expense of the others.
Right, and we have to have adequate reserves for everything we can foresee that we should have reserves for.
Yeah.
I would like to see all that on paper, a flow chart to help, because I can't grab it while you're talking about it.
Yeah, no, and we do, actually, we're trying to simplify some of the flows for the Ordinance 152 committee. So if we're successful in kind of showing the way things work, we'll share that with the board as well.
That'd be great.
It's hard to find a graphic to put on a page representing just a black hole where things go in it. never find again. And that's all I have. That I think we're set.
Great.
Thank you.
I have a question about the performance evaluation of our general manager. Has the district always used a third-party consultant to do that evaluation? Is this, and is that really necessary? I guess I guess I wasn't there when the board decided to do it that way.
Different schools of thought. Typically, what had happened, at least my first 9 years here, is each individual board director was given a form with different categories of performance, ranked the general manager, and then they were all pooled together by the chair and the administrative assistant, clerk to the board, and then translated into a single performance matrix. And that worked pretty well, I thought. It was a little bit of work for the chair, but typically the chair laid it off on, in our case now, it would be Joelle to compile. And then, in one or two sessions, you could have one session where you review all your work collectively, and then another session with the GM. Last year, for whatever reason, it was decided to hire a third party. The county uses a third party to review 6 key management positions. Other organizations use a third party. Frankly, I don't care one way or the other. I just think that was their direction, at least for another year, and this current board can change that direction if they choose to. The form that I developed from Orange County Water District, because what we used previously to me getting here was, a little thin, I would say. But I think it became a little daunting for some of the directors who were used to thin. So, it's just different strokes, I guess. And this board could decide not to go forward with the third party. That's part of discussion during the action, but we at least had direction from the previous board to follow through with this process. And Dr. Garcia did find that the form, and Director Riley was instrumental, so that we had a subcommittee of directors Riley, Potter, and Hoffman. So Mayor Potter's gone, Hoffman's gone. But George actually took quite a bit of a lead to simplify. This thing should be easier. But there were some things that Dr. Garcia felt were left out and or maybe oversimplified. So one of the commitments to the board was to take this new framework and try to put it back into a form that would capture everything that he felt from a professional standpoint should be in there. So that's a piece that didn't get done previously because it was going to get lumped with this third-party review. But you could choose to get a new form and not have the third party do the review, or whatever you like. We're an equal opportunity organization. So, I even at one point proposed doing the review every other year just to make life easier. And you always have the right to call on a review if you think that there's a problem. So, I thought that was a good solution. If everyone felt it was daunting, do it every other year, unless, you need to call me in on the carpet, which is, at your discretion to do. So there's just different ways to skin the cat.
Okay, well, I guess we might ask other directors what they think about whether it's necessary to have a third party or beneficial. But I guess we'll get to that one when it's time.
Great.
So, anything else concerning the agenda for the board meeting?
That's all I have.
Not from me.
All right. Anything else before we adjourn? Then we are adjourned. And I thank all of you. Thanks very much to staff for all the reports and preparing the items, and to Fran for making sure we stay on track here, and
Thank
to
you all.
Joel and Sarah for all the support work.
Have a great
And to our GM.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.